Chumash and Rashi, the Torah portion, Shemini. We are in the fourth reading. We continue. Yesterday was the passing of Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron the high priest, going into the holies on the inauguration day, Rosh Chodesh, the first day of Nisan, and they passed away in the holies. So we continue. In chapter 10, verse number 12. Vidaber Moshe, and Moshe spoke El Aaron to Aaron, his brother, El Elazar, and to Elazar Veisamar, to the Banav Hanisarim, the leftover brothers, those who remained, surviving, in other words. Khu, some Rashi will pick up on that, the fact that they're left over, that they're remaining, that they're the survivors. Chuz hamincha, take the meal grain offering, hanaiseris, that is left over, right? So bring this grain offering, mi'ishe Hashem, from the fire offerings of God, v'yichluha, and they should be eaten. Matzes, eitzel mizbeach, they should be eaten. Unleavened bread, loaves of bread, eitzel mizbeach, next to the altar. Because this offering is the holy of holies, meaning it's a superior level of holiness. Okay, let's see Rashi. So Rashi is picking up on the words hanaisorim, right? Meaning those that were remaining, the two brothers that were remaining. Min hamisa, from what are they remaining from? What does it mean? Obviously, these are the two sons that are remaining because the other two were, died in the holies. So Rashi says they were left remaining from death. Oh, Malamed, this teaches us Shafaleim Niknas Amisa, that the death penalty was sentenced upon them as well. Why? Al Avana Egel, because of the sin of the golden calf. Hushinemar. How do we know that? I mean, it's implied over here because it says that they are the remaining sons of Aaron, which that we know already. So it's superfluous. What does it mean? Remaining therefore from death. That the death sentence was put upon them just the same. Right? In other words, they survived death. But let's not think. Let's learn. Okay, let's put aside what we think, and let's see Rashi, what he says. Okay, because the death penalty was upon them just as well on this sin of the golden calf. Hushin Emar. Right. Hushin Emar. This idea is referred to when it says, "Well, Aaron, Hisan of Hashem Ma'ed Lashmidai." We see this later on in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, when it says that against Aaron, Hashem was very angry to destroy him. Now, what does that mean, to destroy him? Sounds that it's him. What's it got to do with his son? So Rashi explains, the word hashmada, which means to destroy, there's different terms for destruction. This is a term for destruction that the context of it is an annihilation of your children. Shenemar ashmit piryam nimal, as we see this in the book of Amos, it says he destroyed his fruit from above. Fruit meaning his children, that they were destroyed from above. In other words, it's a metaphor for children, destruction of children, that that's what happened. So later on, therefore, we see that God, he was upset at Aaron, and he was taking it out on his children. Now, why? That's irrelevant to the subject over here, right? This is how Rashi's understanding the verse. Okay. Now, why didn't that actually happen? That all of them had died. So Rashi continues, the prayer of Moshe nullified half of the decree. Shenemar, as it says, as later on we see in Deuteronomy, it says in that same instance that I prayed for Aaron at that time. And so his prayer was able to affect nullifying half of the decree, but not the full decree. And therefore, what do we have in our verse? Haneisare means the ones that remained from what? What did Rashi say? Who can tell me? Huh? Remained from what? From death. Exactly. From death. Because of the golden calf. Exactly. But the word remaining means remain surviving from death, not surviving that there's surviving sons. That we know already. Okay? Chutzah mincha, next Rashi. So what do they need to do? They need to take the grain offering. Even though they are what's called einanim, they're in a severe level of mourning because this is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. This is the day that they died, right? This is inauguration day. So Moshe is saying, take the grain off, take this meal offering, even though you are in this level of degree of mourning. And as we know that it's forbidden for an oinen to eat holy foods. Esa mincha, Rashi picks up on the words Esa mincha, zu mincha shmini. What mincha is this? This is the meal offering of the 8th day of inauguration of minchas nachshin and the meal offering of nachshin. So it's 2 meal offerings over here, right? One is because it's the 8th day, meaning inauguration day, because the 7 days before that was the practice run of when Moshe ran the sanctuary, but now it's Aaron who's, doing it. Well, at least from the afternoon onwards, and therefore bring this meal offering, and also Nachshon, who remember on the first day. This will be later on in Parshas Nosai in the book of Bamidbar in Numbers, that will the 12 leaders of the tribes of each tribe will bring an offering each day to inaugurate the altar. So this is the meal offering of Nachshon also. Kivichlu matzahs, and it should be eaten unleavened bread. Mal Talmud Lemar. Why is this stated? All meal offerings are unleavened. We know that already, right? Does anybody know what is the one time that we have leavened bread? Huh? Shavuos, exactly. The Shtei Alechem that we have on Shavuos, that is chametz. That's leavened bread. But all other meal offerings throughout the year are unleavened breads. So we know this already. So why does the verse have to tell us this? We learned this already. This is chapter 10. Remember, we learned it in chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. In Parshas Tzav, we learned that. Why is it telling us this? Because this is a meal offering of the public, or minchas shah, and a meal offering of the hour. And we see nothing like this in future generations. So therefore the Torah had explicitly to tell us that it's unleavened bread, din shar menoches. This is like all the other meal offerings. Nachshon, right? Nachshon's offering. How often did he bring it? One time. So that's called an offering for the moment, for the hour, for the day, right? In other words, it's not a law for good. Mincha, you bring the mincha offering is brought when? Together with the daily sacrifice in the morning and the afternoon, the mincha offering is brought. That's eternal, right? That law we know. We only learned about for offerings that you bring all the time, that it has to be unleavened? How do we know that this offering of Nachshon, and also that it's the 8th day, how often was that going to be brought? One time. How do we know that the one-time offering is also unleavened bread? We don't know. Therefore, the verse tells us. Even though it is under the umbrella of a mincha offering, but we don't know for certain that it's meant to be unleavened until the verse tells us. In other words, what are we saying? You can't learn from something that is a permanent law to something that's a temporary law. The verse has to tell us. Okay? Matzahs, and it should be eaten unleavened. Oh, sorry, we just learned it. Yeah. Okay, 13. All right. You should eat it, but Mokum Kaddish, in a holy place. Why? Ki chadcha, because this is your chak. It's interesting that he translates over here. Rashi is going to translate it as a portion. The word chak comes from like chuka, right? A statutory law, right? But this is your portion, the chak banecha, and this is your son's portions. Him ishe Hashem. This is from the fire offering of God. Kikein suvesi. For so I was commanded by God. Rashi in 13. Chak banecha, then the portion of your sons, the daughters do not have a portion in this holy, in this piece, this holiness. We'll see in the next verse, they do have a portion, right? But in this meal offering, they don't have a portion. So I've commanded that you should eat it in the state of the day of death mourning, right? Aninus, again, it's a day of death, that there's a mourning, meaning that you're mourning the death. That's a biblical law. Nonetheless, even though, generally speaking, you do not eat in mourning, but in this case, this is what was the command was. Okay, 14. So that's the meal offering. Now you got to eat the breast. The chazeh is breast. Tenufa, that was used as a wave offering. That's shoika truma, and the shoik, which is the right hind mid leg, thigh, right? Atruma, that is a raised offering, teichlu, you shall eat it. But makom tohar, here it says in a in a pure place. Before we said in a holy place. Now it says a pure place. Ata, you, who gets to eat this? You, meaning Aaron, uvanecha, and your sons, uvanesecha, and your daughters. Itoch, together with you. We'll see what does it mean, daughters. Ki chadcha, because this is your portion, v'chad benecha, and this is the portion of your sons. Nitnu, that was given, mizivchei shalmei b'nei Yisrael, from the portion of the peace offering, feast offering of the Israelites, of the Jews. So, okay, let's see Rashi. So Rashi says in 14, the breast of waving. This is a peace offering of the public. So this offering is a peace offering. It's not holy, Kodesh Kodshei Kodshim. It's not the most supreme level of holiness, right? As in the previous, and that's why it says Kodesh. It is a lesser, it is holy, but because it's lesser holiness, it's a peace offering. So therefore, there's less boundaries to and limitations to the law. Daughters can eat it from it, right? And it doesn't and it doesn't have to be eaten only in the courtyard. It could be eaten outside, as we'll see in Rashi in a second. Teichlu b'makom tahar. It should be eaten in a pure place. But did they eat the other ones in an impure place? Like, in other words, what's the inference over here? Because this word tahar means pure, right? This is not the term that was used before. So is the implication that before you could eat it in an impure place? Obviously not. It doesn't mean that. Allah. So what does it mean? The ones mentioned are Rishonim, kochim, because they're in the highest level of degree of holiness. Means they have to be eaten in a holy place, not in a pure place, but in a holy place, which is more than pure. What does that mean? In the courtyard of the Mishkan or the Beis Hamikdash? Exactly. But this is a peace offering of the public, right? It's a public offering for the entire community of Jewish people, and it's called a peace offering. Doesn't need to be eaten. Inside of the curtains surrounding the courtyard of the Mishkan. Doesn't need to be eaten there. But it does have to be in Israel within the camp of the Israelites. So what? And that's why the term pure, because who cannot come there? Impure people, like the Metzora, meaning the Metzora is the one who's got leprosy, right? The skin disease. They cannot come because they're termed impure. So Mikan, from here we learn that Kachim Kalim, the lower, lesser degree of holy offerings, that they are eaten in the entire city of Jerusalem. Right, that's in the holy temple. Remember, because we have two things we need to keep in mind: Mishkan, right, the tabernacle, and the Beis Hamikdash in the holy temple. Right, the laws include both. So, what does it mean in the Mishkan? It means outside of the courtyard. What does it mean for pure? What does it mean? And pure means outside of the courtyard, and in the Holy Temple means outside of Temple Mount, all of the city of Jerusalem. And that's why daughters could eat from it, right? Because the daughters were not inside in the courtyard. They wouldn't be there, right? So since it says Tahar, not holy, not Kodesh, it means in holiness, meaning that you are holy, meaning that you are not impure, coming in contact, with something that's impure, and that you can eat from it. Okay. Next Rashi, you, your sons, and your daughters, you and your sons are included in the portion of they don't have a portion of it. But you can gift them, right? Gift of the kahuna of the kohen, and they're permitted to eat it. We're talking about the breast of the wave and the thigh of the raising. Or perhaps maybe it means differently. Maybe the daughters have a portion. That this is a portion for you and for your sons, implying that the portion for the sons ain't but there's not a portion for the daughters. In other words, daughters can eat from it, right? Daughters of the kohen can eat from it. But not because they have a portion. It's because being gifted it. Because the verse ends off saying that it's a portion for you, Aaron, and for your sons, but it doesn't say for the daughters. Yeah, but it just said they could eat from it because they gifted it rather than they have an inherent portion in it. Verse 15. We're good? Well, after we learn it, if you have a question that is on the point here, then you bring it up, sure. Last verse. Sheika Truma. Okay. So this now this hind leg, right, of the sheik, the of the truma, of the raise offering, the chaze atnufa, and the breast of the wave offering, al ishe, that are a fire offering, hachalavim yaviu, you bring the fats with them, right? They have fats that bring that with them. Lahanif tenufa, to wave a wave offering lifnei Hashem, before God. And it should be for you, and for your sons, that are together with you, as an eternal portion, or statutory law. Hashem, as Hashem commanded. Yeah, let's see Rashi. Right, so now the thigh of the raising and the breast of the waving. Lashon asher hu hunaf asher huram. Earlier, there was an expression used in Exodus. We had the same that was mentioned: the breast that was waved and the thigh that was raised. Tenufa, waving means. So explain, what does it mean to wave? Going back and forth, like, right? This is waving back and forth. Right? A truma means raising up and down. Right? Why does the verse separate them? In other words, raising trumas a sheik, the raising of the thigh, with tenufa chaza, the waving of the breast. Lo yadanu, when we know, shenemar, both it says the thigh. Sorry. So why does the verse separate them? Truma b'shayik, raising in regard to the thigh, u'tenufan, waving with the breast. Lo yadanu, we do not know. Sheshneihem, because both the thigh and the breast, v'haram v'anafar, are both raised and waved. It's separating it, saying, the thigh, raise it, and the breast, wave it. But in fact, we already learned that you do both to both of them. So why is the verse separating them over here? As if you only do one for one and one for the other? Rashi says, I don't know. Pretty honest. Upon the fats of the fire offering. You find Rashi, al ishe achalavim, on the fire offering fats. Mikan, from here, shechalavim lamata, the fats are on the bottom. It's just nufa at the time of waving. Yishuv mikrois. Fats are at the bottom, right? but says Rashi, that's when you're waving the Yishuv HaMikrois resolution. There's a contradiction over here. There shouldn't be a contradiction. It's explained all the three relevant verses. It's Aaron. One sec. Because here it says, the fats are upon, but it's in fact, it's below the meat. So we learned in last week's, or in 2 weeks ago, in Parshas Tzav, Rashi dealt with it there. Okay. Let us see some thoughts from the Rebbe. Oops. Righty? No, thanks. Okay, we're going to actually go back to yesterday. All right. We're going to go back to yesterday. Yesterday was a lot of heavy duty stuff. The death of the two sons and the whole story behind it. Oops. The wrong way. You up for that, everybody? Yeah. Thumbs up. Okay, so here in chapter 10, verse number 2 from yesterday, a fire went out from before God and consumed them, and they died before God. None of an aviu, right? What does Rashi say over here? You can see the Rashi in front of you, so you can see it, right? So there's a difference of opinion. A fire went forth, right? So Rebbe Elazar says, why did they die? It's because they decided a halachic matter to offer up incense in the presence of their teacher, Moshe. Rabbi Shmuel says the reason they died is because they entered the sanctuary drinking after drinking wine. And this is, so how do we know that this is the case? Because after they died, God warns the remaining not to enter the sanctuary drinking wine. And there's a parable there of the household member right there. Okay. Got it? Yeah. We're all good. We're good. Again, chapter 10, verse 2, right? So the Rebbe asks the following, follow, folks. The Rebbe asks on the commentators on Rashi. Oh, sorry, not asked. He brings down from the commentators on Rashi. Let me just see who. The Maral. I don't know who else. I think it's others also. Right? So the reason why the Bnei Aaron died is very clear. Look at the verse before. It says it's because they brought a foreign fire into the holies, right? That they were not commanded. Why does Rashi have to give us a reason? Another reason that they died. Is the question clear? Yeah. The wine, or that they said halacha, right, about the incense before their teacher. No. Any explanation. The verse says why they died. Look at the verse number 1, right? Because they brought they brought before God a fire that was foreign, as much as they were not commanded to offer it. Oh, you were commanded. You go into you go into the holies, holy of holies, and you're not commanded to go there. I mean, hey, that's not putting your life in your hands. Yeah, Menachem Hillel, makes sense. That's what the commentators ask. And not only that, the Rebbe continues and says that Rashi isn't satisfied with one explanation. He has to give us 2 explanations, right? All right, so in order to understand this, first we would preface another question. Why does Rashi, in his explanation, look over here, if you look in verse number 2, he quotes from the verse, V'teitze eish, and a fire went forth. Right? But that's got nothing to do with his explanation. It should be because Ve'amusa lifnei Hashem. What is he explaining? Why they died before God? Right? In the previous verse, it doesn't say they died, right? In our verse, it says they died. What is Rashi explaining? Why they died. But he doesn't bring down those words. He brings down the words, V'teitze eish, and a fire came out before God. A fire came out. Right? Seemingly, his explanation is not on those words about the fire, but about what happened with the fire. They died. But Rashi's not explaining the words that they died. What's going on over here? This totally doesn't make sense. Yeah? Is that clear? How about yeah? Rashi should be explaining the words that they died, but that he's not explaining those words because that's not what he brings down from the verse. Not in his, no, listen carefully, please. Listen carefully. Not in his commentary, because he is in his commentary explaining why they died. What does Rashi do? What's Rashi's planning? What is Rashi trying to do? Explain the verse. Well, what's difficult with the verse? If Rashi is explaining what's difficult with the verse is why they died. So bring down the words that they died. And that's what you're explaining. But he's not explaining the fact that they died. He's explaining on the words, and a fire went out. What's that got to do with the point?
I said that the word died is not in his commentary.
No, not in his commentary, in what he's explaining. No, not in his commentary. In the word that he's taking from the verse to explain. That's not commentary. That's from the verse that he's commenting on. He should be commenting on, seemingly, right? What makes sense to us in the question, at least, on the words that they died. But he's not commenting on that. He's commenting on the fire went out. What's that got to do with the?
Was commenting on the first, not the second.
No.
The first verse.
No.
The
No.
first verse that talked about the.
No, we're on the second verse. No, you're not, you're not listening. You're not hearing. Rashi is explaining why they died. So then what are you explaining? The words in the verse that say they died. That's so he should quote from the verse, they died, and explain why they died. That's what he's doing, right? But that's what Rashi did. He's not quoting the words, and they died. And he's not even referencing at all to it. He's only referencing from the verse, a fire went out.
What's that?
Well, that's not
He's not commentating, nowhere does it say died in his commentary.
not in his
It
commentary.
doesn't say died in his commentary.
Not in his commentary. Commentary is his explanation.
Yeah,
No, that's not the point at all. In what he's quoting from the verse that he's commenting on is the issue.
let me get this straight. He's commentating on the first verse.
No. No, on the second verse, but there's the words, "A fire went out before God and it consumed them and they died." So he should be explaining they died and what the reasons is what they died. So he should quote from the verse, and they died. He's not quoting from the verse and they died. He's quoting from the verse and a fire went out. Okay?
Fine.
Okay. So Rashi explains. This expression that a fire went out before God is already 2 verses earlier. You mentioned it yesterday when we explained, right? Here, a fire went out before God and consumed on the altar the fire offering, the ascent offering, and all the fats. And the nation praised and sang and praised to God. They saw rather the nation, the people, and they praised God and they fell upon their faces in the praise of God, right? So but here we have the same words, Vatetze Eish Lifnei Hashem. And here we have Vatetze Eish Lifnei Hashem. The exact same words, right? Rashi brings that, right? So in the first time, it's a positive expression because it means that the divine presence of God was upon the altar, that therefore brought a great joy to the people. And that's why when they saw it, they sang in praise of God and fell upon their faces. So Rashi is bothered now. How's it possible that the exact same language, the exact same terminology, that a fire came out before God should be used in the opposite way? It must mean, right, that there's some kind of punishment over here, right, for this, right, that are only 2 verses later. Like it's not even in a different paragraph, it's in the same storyline, right? 2 verses later, same term, but it has a complete different implication of something of punishment. Therefore, Rashi has to explain, according to Rashi, that it was the first thing he explains is because of the keteris, of the incense that they brought. Because in the verse it says about the incense, go to verse 1 again, right? They brought incense, keteris, right? They brought incense, right? Now, they brought incense over here. That's what they brought, not Abin Abihu, right? So it seems like it's because of the incense that they brought that this fire came, right? Because that's how a fire, right? They brought incense, which is a fire before God, right? So therefore, from here, so it doesn't mean therefore from here, then You can't, it's not possible to explain that their sin was only literally that they brought the fire that was a foreign fire against the command that was not commanded by God. Because if that was the case, it's self-understood that it would not be accepted and bring about the divine presence of God. One second, I'm not certain I got this clear. Give me a moment.
I'm gonna explain to you. I'm just kidding. Are you rushing to play ball?
Shari Elo Haisa Suki.
101.
Okay, that's not our focus right now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ah, okay. The words "a fire went out before God." The fact that it's using the same expression and a bad thing happened over here, right? We don't need the verse doesn't have to tell us that. Use the same expression that a bad thing happened. Of course, it's not going to be accepted by God because it was a foreign thing that they did that they were not commanded. So you don't need to use the same expression. The fact that it's saying a fire came out, that expression, the exact same expression that was brought before that was brought the Shekhinah, obviously the Shekhinah is not coming here. So why use, and so say here, like, it's like to emphasize that the Shekhinah did. No, you don't need that, obviously. They did something that was not appropriate. So it must be coming to tell me something else. That's what it means over here. Therefore, Rashi has to say, it's coming to say something else that they did. And that was the two explanations that he gives. And the first explanation is not sufficient. Therefore, needed a second one. Why? Our sages say that that if you say something you didn't hear from your teacher, you cause the divine presence of Shekhinah to be removed. All the more so that you're not satisfied that that you did it before your teacher is even greater. So there's a wonderment over here. How is it that the sons of Aaron that sinned in that they said this halacha before their teacher, Moshe, how could it be that the incense, their incense that would be accepted? Obviously, because they were saying something that they didn't hear from their teacher, which causes the Shekhinah to be removed. In other words, we don't need the verse to tell me this. That's why he has to give the second explanation. Okay. I have to think about that a bit more.
Said or they did?
All right, folks.